Welcome back! If you haven't seen us before, if you haven't seen our other channel, it's linked down below.
It's all about this guy. He's special.
Okay, anyways, welcome back to our channel.
He wants to be a part of this.
We're gonna watch Cyberpunk-Edgerunners. It's a Polish-Japanese anime based on a game, so it's kind of like Arcane. I really loved Arcane. I think it's one of my favorite series. So I'm interested to see how this is gonna go. It looks like it's edited and like styled a little bit differently to Arcane, but keen to see anyways. Momo is sitting on my notes, so I have no idea what else I wrote down.
It's always great to have.
I believe it's a prequel to the game. So, I mean, I didn't play the game, so I have no idea. So I believe it's set in like this dystopian, futuristic town place or something where corruption and crime and stuff is running rampant.
So it's like Arcane.
Basically, and it's about David, I believe, who loses everything and then he decides to go to the dark side. Let's go. Momo, how am I supposed to make notes?
Your problem, human, not his.
Immediately, it has a much different feel.
A much more
Than
anime
Arcane.
vibe than
Yeah.
Arcane, which was a little bit more drawn in a way. This is very anime-ish
Yeah.
so far. It also reminds me a little bit. The styling actually reminds me a little of.
Helsing.
No, I mean the blood. Yes.
Very violent from the get-go. As you can see, all the cats have joined us. Momo keeps flicking the microphones.
100% I'm going to have the stupid spinning wheel over my head again now.
100%.
A Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah.
The drawing style is very similar.
I wonder if it's the same
Artist?
or the same studio.
Same studio. And I mean the original, not the Scarlett Johansson version. Although we do love ScarJo.
I assume this is one of the bad guys. Who's apparently bulletproof. This is very violent.
You just cut that guy in half.
Yeah, so all the bad guys are basically not called cyberpunks. So they're the scourge of the city from what I understand. So I usually struggle with animes. I kind of lose interest very quickly. Sometimes it takes too long for a story to really get going.
He has a problem with fillers and so on.
Yeah.
So there are very few animes that I've gotten him to watch through and through. I think Full Metal he watched all the way through. But anything that has like multiple seasons over
Where like
10
one fight
years.
takes the entire season. But I'm hoping because this is for Netflix that it might be a bit quicker to get going and so on.
And that's brutal.
That's very cool. Color changing thing.
Also, he's basically wearing a bra.
No,
Got
I
hit
think he
by
got
the
hit
good
by something.
by the good guys. Evidently, I mean, the question is how
Well, they're all like
the modifications
they're
work.
all they're all like cyber enhanced. So I assume there's like a soft spot somewhere.
Seems to be the spine by what I saw here.
The colors and stuff are very funky. I like it.
The lighting is beautiful right now
Yeah.
with the strips coming down.
And like the styling is really cool. Ooh, that was interesting.
David, that you?
Okay, so I assume he was just in that guy's
Yeah.
memory or something.
Cool.
Not entirely sure what just happened, but I think they have like chips that they can implant or something like that. I assume this is David who like has nothing. Okay, so I assume that's what was
That's what he was
that was
seeing.
what you seeing. But why him? Obviously not the happiest place to live. I assume like in Arcane you have the super rich and then like the super poor and that's where he falls in.
And there's no in between.
Yeah. There's a lot going on here.
At what point did we decide that it would be cooler to put trains
Upside
under the
down.
rail than above the
Well,
rail?
it does exist. Love the anime run where you like. Have you ever tried running with your hands in your pockets? You can see he's obviously not as cool as everyone else. He's got like older tech and stuff.
They're also giving him the mad stink eye. That guy in particular.
Why do I feel like he's not the meditation type? I feel like it's not a very good system if someone's old tech breaks it.
She's not wrong. Appreciate your parents, kids.
I assume something's going to happen to the mother.
Always does for heroes, doesn't it?
I'm not sure how much he's the hero, because like from what I read, he goes to the bad side.
But we don't write stories about bad guys.
There
Bye,
it is.
Mom.
Did they just shoot that bad guys through their car?
Well, the bad guys shot.
Well, that's what I mean.
The bad guys shot the suits.
Well, that's what I
They're
mean.
privileged.
But that's
Why
what I
has
mean.
she not hit brakes yet? The moment someone shoots at my car, my foot is on the brake. No
Sorry
expert
to say,
here.
it was at the end of their first episode, because that would be quite the cliffhanger.
Mom! Is that trauma team? Oh, thank Christ.
I don't think so.
What the hell? Hey!
So they really treat poor people like crap.
Mom, wake up! Fucking piece of...
Okay, I understand.
So there really is a bit of a similarity to Arcane, where like the poor just get shoved off. Breaking into your own home, we've all been there.
Quite literally.
Christ. Not selling, just want an estimate.
Where do you get that?
I assume he's in contact with someone who also sent him the chip of the other guy.
Come on, Joe.
So he's already slightly in the underground.
Whatever. Illegal. Whatever. Whoa.
He also speaks to himself a lot.
I'm really wondering how he got that stuff though.
Yeah. Did we miss something?
Because if it's so high military, like well, how does he have it?
Don't you say it.
Do not insult a man's mommy.
Moms off limit! Moms are always off limit!
Okay, so it's like the Matrix where you can upload fight moves and shit.
Can someone punch the prick in the face?
Assume that comes later.
Nothing like the Strong Arms 400 to bring out the best in your kung fu.
David is going to be the human that never stays down. Like every hero ever.
Hitting rock bottom, I assume his mother was gonna die.
Wow. Oh look, mommy in a jar. Time to make a rash decision.
I want this. Fused here. High time I crumb the fuck up.
Well, that was interesting.
Very anime-esque.
Yeah.
Does it have any Japanese?
Well, the series was made by Japanese, Polish. That's
Okay,
what
that
Wikipedia
makes
says.
sense.
Wikipedia? You're using Wikipedia as your source of information?
Yeah, well, interesting. Definitely keeps you watching. Quite brutal. Gets your typical misunderstood poor kid kind of story, I suppose.
Well, the basic is very been there, done that. Yeah, the kid that doesn't fit in, that's being mom working hard to give him a better future,
But he's
and
kind
he's
of
not
been pushed out of
appreciating
his
it.
bound. Well, not just not appreciating, but I think she's trying to. I don't know. It's difficult. Like push him out of his bounds almost. Because I mean, it's,
That's the only way for him to have a future.
yeah, I suppose.
So she's doing it out of what she feels is right for him. He, being young, obviously doesn't see that far ahead or appreciate it that much. Plus, he has to go through the trouble of being the
Bully and
outcast.
stuff. Yeah.
So obviously, it is harder that way.
Crazy because in that world, obviously, like there's no humanity left. Everything is about money. I mean, they don't. If you don't have the right insurance plan, tough luck, you die.
Yeah, the fact that there's no.
Empathy or sympathy.
Yeah, I mean, this is a horrible thing to compare to, but I mean, in South Africa, we obviously have two different types of healthcares. We have private healthcare and public healthcare. And yes, the private one is vastly better.
But that doesn't mean that.
That
if you
doesn't mean
come-
that if there is an accident with someone who isn't insured, which we have quite a few people in South Africa who aren't insured, but the ambulances will pick them up and
you
will
still do stuff to keep people
yeah.
alive. You don't just like, oh, you don't have insurance, tough luck.
100%. The ambulances will still come, they will still treat, and then the only difference is that they will then drop you at a public hospital rather than a private one.
Yeah.
But our private hospitals are pretty good. The waiting lines are a little different and so on, and sometimes getting treated quickly is a bit of an issue, but in emergency situations that all gets cancelled out anyways, because if it's an emergency then you get priority anyways. They kind of separate you into critical cases and so on.
I found that the animation style quite cool as well. Like I love the colors and stuff. It's a bit more out there. It's a bit more neon, retro, funky.
It's
Not
very,
your typical I feel like a lot of animes are a bit more muted and more like
Not
traditional.
really,
It's almost traditional, I feel.
Yeah,
This is
I think
very neon funky out there.
I actually think this is more traditional than what the newer. That's why I said
From the
Ghost in
styling,
the Shell.
from the styling side, but from the colors, it's
Yeah.
a lot more cyber, I suppose.
From the styling, it really reminds me of the older animes rather than the newer ones, where it's a little bit sharper and like blurred backgrounds and so on was really big back then. And
like the funky color changes at the beginning when that guy's running around the circle was really cool.
and it's quite choppy, which actually makes like there's very fast frames and a lot of like jumping around and so on, and actually makes you feel with the storyline actually makes you feel a little uncomfortable. And I think that was obviously done on purpose to keep you on edge the entire time.
There was a couple of instances where I wasn't quite sure what was happening, like in the beginning when he had that thing in him and he was seeing those visions and stuff. Also,
Yeah, so
who's this Katsuo chap? Is he like...
So that's what I wrote down as well. Like, what is the relationship between the enhanced and the people with the chips? Because
Well, I think-
evidently he was he watching? Was he involved?
So I think everyone has access to those chips, and the chips are like the guy's memory, because he kept scratching that thing like something was missing. So I don't know where that falls in.
But how does that relate to the people who are like properly enhanced, let's say?
Like military grade. Well, that's what he's going to do at the next episode by the look of it.
So do you
Also,
just
how
get
did he
to
get
watch?
that tech? If that tech is so high end...
But do you get to watch, or are they like taking over people who are highly like? What was linked? Because he was obviously watching in that opening scene. He was obviously like.
Well, I
kind
think
of
they
there
took the
in a
chip
way.
out of that guy who died and put it in, or linked it to him or something.
And he
was in
he
his
just
memory.
got to see it from the memory.
That's what I think happened. And there's obviously like in the Matrix where you can upload skills
More
and
and
stuff.
more
And
information
obviously, the more
depending
money you
on-
have,
yes.
the better you're off.
Your tech is.
But
or your
that leads me
upgrades
again
are.
to like, how did he get that spinal thing that he's now going to implant in the next
That's the
episode?
one thing that I missed. Like, where did he get the spine tech? Because he didn't seem to have it at any point, and then suddenly it was just there. And it's like military grade or whatever. So where did it just appear? Did we miss that? If we did, please pop it in the comments.
Yeah, because I was also very lost there.
And now going forward, I mean, he's obviously mom is gone, which is always like the trigger for pretty much every story ever. He has a lot of debt. They made that very obvious.
Well, I think maybe he's going to fall in with... so the Edgerunners are the bad guys. So I think he's going to fall in with them and then figure out that they're...
I'm wondering who he's blaming at this point, because technically speaking here...
That's why I mentioned Arcane a lot. It's the good guys, the richer people who end up being the bad guys, because the poorer people are actually just... They can't help their situation because they're forced into it by the rich people.
That's why I'm saying I'm wondering who he's blaming here, because if you're obviously looking at it in a more logical way, technically speaking, it was the Edgerunners that shot at the Suits car. So technically they started this. But obviously he's relating more to the fact that his mom wasn't picked up and they only picked up the rich people for treatment, and that mom died because she couldn't afford the treatment. But if you break it back down all the way to the beginning of the incident, technically speaking, the Edgerunners were responsible for his mom's death.
So that's
more
why,
so than the Suits were.
That's why it's interesting. I wonder who actually is the good and who's the bad. Yeah, it's not as straightforward as in a lot of shows.
I think everybody's kind of a little bit bad, but he's now going to choose one evil over the other, evidently, to fight one evil. But then at what point will he realize that he is not on the good side either?
Yeah.
Or is there a good side even? That's the big question here. Is there the good side would probably have been to do exactly what his mother wanted him to do: stay in school, get ahead, and then use your position ahead and your past to relate
I'd rather
back.
work your way up instead of...
Work your way up reasonably and know where you come from, remember where you come from, and then help from above.
Yeah.
That would probably have been the least violent way to do it, but then there wouldn't be a story, would there?
So
Who would watch the show where the kid stays in school and mom stays alive and we all live happily ever after?
I found the school scene quite interesting because that's like... I think we're not that far off from having a future like that. In a lot of private schools these days, kids already have iPads and stuff.
Never mind that. A lot of varsities because of the pandemic, obviously.
All online and stuff.
My little sister did her, I think 80% of her, I think 2 years out of 3 years of her bachelor degree.
Yeah, it was all
she did
online.
from home, all online, which is very
and
respectable.
VR headsets and stuff are becoming more and more popular and more small.
And then the next thing is, I do think like a mix of two is probably the best, because I think if I had been allowed to do schoolwork from home only, I don't know how much of it would have gotten done, reasonably speaking.
But I think from a school's money point of view, it's easier for them to just tell kids, you're doing this from home, buy this
you have
headset
the
or something.
technology
Yeah, it's going to become like that, where if you're rich and you can afford that, that's how you do school, and you lose that whole personal interaction.
Well, although technically governments are supposed to, in the real world, most governments support the public school system, And the tech wouldn't be as good, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. Private school always obviously have generally more advanced tech and better tech and get upgraded more often because their fees are higher and they have donations and so on. But I would assume that most public schools would still have some sort of access, just worse access.
And there's obviously very limited personal interaction in this world because I mean all the VR
Very Wall-E-ish.
VR sexy time.
It actually reminded me a lot of Ready Player One in some ways.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Because that's also similar, where you're starting to like break from the real world by going into.
Yeah, and you can do whatever
the fake.
fantasy you want. You can create whatever girl you want
can
to
be
be with.
whoever-
You can
yeah.
be whatever you want.
Which is escapism.
Scary.
Escapism.
And I mean, but anyways, we'll see what episode 2 holds. I thought that was quite interesting.
If you like this, give it a like, give it a comment, subscribe.
And
Again, wherever the subscribe button will be. And if you have any shows you want us to react to that you can recommend, pop it into the comments and we'll add it to the list.
cheers.
Bye.